and faculty roles to be sort of the leaders with these LinkedIn profiles. And that way, as you interact with students, you can start to guide them and do, kind of your own mini Rock Your Profile session with them to get them a presence on the LinkedIn network, and so on. So without further ado, let me
Does it work or no?
advance. It was working though, it was great. Thank you. Okay, so this is the intro. We're in it. Rock your profile. So I'm going to go through the building blocks of a profile. And so if you're looking at someone's profile, basically from top to down to the middle, we're looking at photos and so on. Then I'm going to go in and look at my profile and show you all how I interpret the story that I want to put out there on the professional network of LinkedIn. Then I've got a little bit there about like, what else besides your profile? Like, how are you going to make connections? What are you seeing in there when you see all these different people's names and that sort of thing? And then making your feed interesting. Like, what are some things that you can do when you're logged into LinkedIn so that when you're scrolling through that main landing page, you see stuff that's relevant to you? And now, like the third version of an introduction here, but when we said that phrase around transferability of skills, I think that this is a slide that I like to do to talk about that. This squiggly line is my career history. I just put that squiggly line in today. Previous versions of this, I had a straight, and I was like, well, I'm trying to explain that someone's career path is not always linear and straightforward. So I like to, in the proud community college graduate, got my associates transferred, the system works. So I started, as Teresa had mentioned, in higher education, and mainly in building study abroad programs. I moved around geographically quite a bit, and at one point abruptly moved to Wisconsin, and I got an academic advising job there. So my passion, developing study abroad programs. While I was in higher education doing that, moved to academic advising. Really wanted to return to my passion, moved back to building study abroad programs. Then 2020, nobody was leaving the country. And so facilitating international exchange was not happening, really. So I pivoted to be a project manager at Samuel Merritt University, Healthcare Sciences University, based in Oakland, but they have Peninsula branches as well. Then I said, well, I want to try my hand at tech. I live in Northern California. So I worked for a startup called ConnectEd. Cranium Cafe is a tool used by a lot of California community colleges. That's run by ConnectEd. So kind of a little bit of a crossover of worlds there. And from that startup, I moved on to LinkedIn, and that's where I am today. So just wanted to talk about that and how do you go from higher education to tech? It's through the transferability of skills. And we'll get into that as I get to my profile and so on. By the way, really informal. So if you have any questions along the way, just shout them out. Or if I'm not looking at you, wave or shout them out. Totally good. And you won't stump me. This is material that I know pretty well. How about a little pop quiz? So let's go to the next. How many people are on LinkedIn? How many people have a LinkedIn profile? How many members are there across the world? Any, just whatever number, 20, 25?
120 million.
Ooh, okay, that's a good one. Any other guesses? Do we want to do high, low, anything? Well, anyone in the chat? Now's your chance, Zoomies.
Cheryl says 500 million.
Hey, we're getting there. We're getting there, but we're gonna have to go a little higher than that.
Oh, 1 billion from Anna in the chat.
Ding, ding, Anna. You got it, 1 billion. So the next slide. 1 billion members. Well, there was 1 billion members a few months ago. So now we're probably at 1.1 billion. Across 200 countries and territories, there are 5 new members signing up every second. A massive network. And that's the point of why I wanted to share that with you is it's just all over the world, these connections, and the world becomes even smaller all the time with technological advancement. So why are all these people interested in LinkedIn? Why do 1 billion people come to LinkedIn? Or why does LinkedIn exist? Why do I work for this company and so on? Is our vision. Our vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And that is such a beautiful thing when you think about, okay, so it's 200 different countries that have people on LinkedIn, over 1 billion people there. And we're trying to make those connections as deep and as far as we can to connect people. And you may not know somebody right now, but then you end up linking up with somebody in Ukraine and you have the most wonderful ideas, and then you launch a startup with somebody across the world. Like, those are the kinds of interactions we're trying to facilitate on LinkedIn. Okay, now the profile building blocks. So the next slide will just show you a little bit about what you should be thinking of. What's your mindset as you're going in and constructing your LinkedIn profile? And there was a little bit about that in the description of the session that I reviewed, and it was about, like, you don't have to have a online version of your resume. It doesn't have to be like cut and paste from the Word document that you're using for your resume. It's more about telling your career story out there. So it's including your passions, your goals, what are your skills and talents, and also the ways that you can demonstrate credibility. Like, okay, so I have this skill, but how did I earn that, or how did I gain that skill or hone that skill? It's through the context of your LinkedIn profile that you explain that to whoever might be coming across. So then, profile pictures, like one of the first things, and kind of a cool thing to do. You're like, what do I want my professional brand to be? And that first visual impact, your profile picture. By the way, those of us who are here doing profile pictures after this session around the corner, so you can get a nice fresh headshot. But what are some great profile pics, and some that are totally cool and very, what was I gonna say? Very, what's that phrase now? Very demure, very cutesy. But not optimized. And the main reason why the ones on the right side are not super demure or cutesy is that you're sharing the spotlight, right? It's your profile, and you mainly want people to know who is, whose information this is about. Those are all great, and it is also about being your authentic self on LinkedIn. So you can use your judgment, and there is really no like, this is wrong and this is right binary kind of situation, but it's better to do these ones here. So, visual impact, like even when somebody's searching your name and so on, you got your profile picture, but then under your name is this quick little like quip about you, a few words there. So your headline is something to pay attention to, and on your regular profile, it comes right under your profile picture. There's, again, like no super perfect formula on this, and some people have a really informal headline, and some people have very, you didn't hear this from me, but a very dull headline. Because by default, when you open your LinkedIn profile and you start putting in your experience, it's gonna just pull your most recent job title in there as your default. Recommendation is to customize it, absolutely. And you can put things in that represent your professional brand, hashtags, things that are important to you. I do mention my job in there. It's like the first couple things. It's a senior CSM at LinkedIn Learning, and then I go in and talk a little bit more about my professional brand. Along the way, throughout time, I've had like long ones and shorter ones. I would recommend trying to go on the more brief, concise, shorter side, because you can see it's just a couple words there. So thinking about that, and it could be like, so my old boss was like, her title is like Vice President of Partnerships. Her headline on LinkedIn was like third culture kid, mom, sales leader, those sorts of things. So it's about your brand and representing your authentic self on there. So the next thing down. Okay, so just in the background of this slide, you can kind of see some of the pieces that we've been talking about so far.
Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Oliver.
Name, title, and then the next piece is your summary there. And so this is what we're talking about. The summary is like your elevator pitch. If you've heard that concept before, it's just like, if you walk in an elevator and it's an executive in there and it's just the two of you, and you've got the executive's attention for like 40 seconds or something, however long it takes to get to where your destination is. And he said, hey, how are you? What do you do around here? you want to have something ready to go to pull out of your pocket about about who you are, your impact, your goals in life, and so on. So this is the section that you write it on your LinkedIn profile. And the recommendation is to be like 40 plus words. So not like super short, but not super long either. You want to give some detail in there. And we got a couple of examples in the next slides, actually. This one, a little on the longer side, but it's totally fine because, again, this is not like coming up in your search or anything. This is when somebody lands on your profile. This one is, well, also like to say, as it says on the slide, there are many versions of good, right? This is not copy this one and just change it out for, you know, what you do in your job. But it's a good example, and that's why it's good, right? Talk about some of your successes. So obtaining 109% of your quota. You know, what are some achievements that you're proud of? Explaining what you do, framing your past, and then, you know, when you can, making use of bullets here. So what are some of your awards, achievements, and so on? So one good example there. The next slide has a dichotomy, if you will. So we have a good example here, a little bit shorter, which I personally like to see. And then one that's not so good. It's like one sentence or two sentences, maybe it's technically 3 sentences down there. It's a little too brief. It doesn't really talk about your past experiences and how that informs what you do today, about your goals, your why. It doesn't really tell that much. I guess it says, let's make the world better together. That's his why, that person's why. But let's go a little longer. So that is your about section. And when we get to my profile, I'll talk to you about mine because that's a big place where I talk about my transferable skills. So where did I come from? Higher ed background. And how did that bring me to where I am now in tech? So then the next slide. Ooh, okay, so those were the basic building blocks of the top of the profile. There's an experience section just below that, which I'll talk about a little bit when we go into My Profile Live. But before we go into My Profile Live and change gears, there's some little like kind of not secret, but almost secret kinds of things about your LinkedIn profile. So the next slide tells you one thing about customizing your URL. When you are logged in to your LinkedIn profile, up in the top right corner, you're going to have this option here that says edit public profile and URL. When you click that, you get a chance to choose basically your web address. You know, so the standard will be linkedin.com/in, and then everything past that second slash is what you're going to be able to customize. So by default, it's probably like letters and numbers and whatever, gibberish. But you can customize that. So mine says like linkedin.com/in/afauché, my first initial and last name. One of my colleagues is Jess at Work, or somebody who has a really unique and cool last name, Bootcamp. His is linkedin.com/in/bootcamp. So that's a good one. So that you have, I mean, if later on down the road, you're putting it on a business card or something like that, you have a really easy URL instead of a URL that's a bunch of numbers and letters and stuff. So pro tip, click that and claim your URL. Second thing is you can have your name pronunciation in there. This, as you can probably infer from the screenshot, it's a feature only available on the mobile app. So have that noted that once you get in and you have your profile and, you know, even just getting started, I also recommend the mobile app. And one of the things you can unlock with the mobile app is recording the pronunciation of your name. So it's good, even if you have, you know, a name that's probably phonetically intuitive in our part of the world. You will have likely people from around the world viewing your profile at some point, and they may be interested in knowing how to pronounce your name, or later on down the road, you're going to be a speaker at a conference, somebody has to introduce you. They can go into your profile and check how to pronounce your name and save everybody a little bit of embarrassment on there. And for example, for mine, so my last name is a French last name. It's Faucher, but it's spelled F-A-U-C-H-E-R. Most people look at that and they say Foucher. My family's from Quebec. That is not how you pronounce my name. So I have my name recorded on my LinkedIn profile for anyone who takes that step to listen to it. So those are good things. And lastly, something else that you can do here is putting your pronouns in there. So kind of similar around your identity is like, recording your name and also sharing your pronouns, how you want to be introduced, referred to, or spoken to directly is really nice to include on there. Yeah, that was the last pro tip. So let's have a look at this old profile here, which I have, Teresa, as like, if we escape out of presenter mode there, and then I have it separate right here, so feed. So what you're seeing here is just when you log into linkedin.com, it is the feed. So later on, I said I have some slides about how to make your feed interesting. And I'll show you how to kind of put cool stuff in here. Look at these West Valley administrators and here in my feed, a big fan of WVC. This is my profile. And so you can kind of see here, we didn't talk about it. We talked about profile images, but not the header image. This is something that I added that is from LinkedIn.
So it's not showing right now.
Oh,
It didn't switch.
oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
everyone, the Zoomies.
Oh, you gotta share
Let's-
screen.
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, I gotta reshare that.
Oh, so you hit escape here.
And there was a question about like fonts and is that gonna be later customization? You can ask that later, Teresa.
Yeah, I was gonna ask him.
Oh,
when I had
okay.
a chance.
I don't know if there's any questions from the
New
Zoomies.
share.
New share.
And then.
Thanks
go
for your
here.
patience, everyone.
Thank you,
Good.
Eric.
Here we go. Okay,
There
so
you go, yep.
you missed the regular feed, nothing super special there. Actually, I'll click onto it. I don't want you to feel like you're missing out. This is when you log into linkedin.com, what you see here. So you got a little tag around your profile, but your feed there. And like I said, I'm gonna have a few slides about like, hey, some pro tips about what you can do to build out your feed and have interesting information served up to you. I'm gonna go to my profile now. And what you see is this header image. Once you're logged in and you go to your profile, you see these pencils everywhere. This is something that you can customize. So you can upload any header image that you want. I happen to have one that's branded for my company to celebrate when we cross the milestone of 1 billion members. But usually I have something like, some beautiful rolling hills from Northern California or a cityscape or something like that. You can do whatever you want. You can have, family reunion photo or something. Fully customizable. And again, it's about your story and the brand that you want to share. You have your profile picture. This speaker indication means I have my name pronunciation there. So whenever you see that on somebody's profile, you know that you can hear how they pronounce their name, which is a beautiful, courteous thing that you can do. My pronouns. This is my headline. So we said like when you're searching someone's name, the thing that comes up right below their name is the headline, and that's there. And if you wanted to edit yours, you just click that pencil. A few things are bundled into that one area there. So senior CSM at LinkedIn Learning. And then what else is, what else is my professional brand? Learning and development strategist, because in my day job, I'm helping HR departments of large enterprise corporations utilize LinkedIn Learning to build critical skills for their workforce. So those are the things up in the top. You have your employer here. So from your experience section, your employer's logo is going to come up here, and then your most recent education is going to show up over here. And should you choose not to have those up here, you can toggle those off as well. These are a couple of extra things on here that are visible to me because I'm logged in, but aren't visible on your public profile because they talk about like who's looked at your profile and so on, which is also an interesting thing. If you're not super experienced with LinkedIn, you can tell who's looked at your profile, and often you'll get a connection from that. But even if you don't, you can see like, oh wow, for some reason my profile showed up in the search for somebody who was looking for business development employees.
So Aaron, you can only see who's seen you if you're paying for the subscription, right? If
You can see profile views even without premium,
okay,
but with premium, you get to like really see who's seen your profile. You get a little bit more intel.
okay.
And conversely, when you have premium, you can block your own like little breadcrumbs, right? So you can browse people's profile in private when you have premium. So yeah, interesting stuff there. But the about section, so we were talking, we had the good version a little long, then the second good version a little shorter, and then the not so good version that was like, I want to be the next Elon Musk. This is where that translates to your real profile under the about section. And this is where, as I said, I try to articulate my transferable skills to try to make it make sense. My career jumps from higher education to tech. And so I put a little thought into it and I was like, what's a commonality between my previous, set of jobs, my previous career and my current career? And it is, luckily for me, I still get to work in learning and development. So education is all about equipping people with skills and developing them to, have a successful life, contribute to the workforce, whatever their future may be. And what I do now is I work with HR departments to help companies better their employees and make them successful through the long run in their career. So I think that that's a really cool way to say like, hey, my old experience is not in this industry, but it has really shaped a lot about my thought process and what I bring to work. And it's going to be really interesting to apply those theories to the work that I do now. So basically, that's what I want somebody to come away with when they're reading my about section. Then under these dashes, I did something like totally optional, but I wanted to also give a little bit about my work style in there. So I talked about my strengths from the StrengthsFinder assessment, my Myers-Briggs, my DISC profile, and then some of the skills that I feel like are the strongest for me that I've honed over the years. I just included that in there, totally optional. It's actually not even quite standard. Something here, the featured section is totally optional. And I'll tell you that what I did is I put in some resources that my customers, the people that I help in my job, would be looking for from my expertise, right? So they're like, oh yeah, who's our customer success manager, Aaron? We go to Aaron's profile and they will see the tools that they are interested in seeing for their job in here in the featured section. So that was an interesting take on that. But often, even better is like if you are somebody who's in UX design or art or a writer or what have you, you can put your own materials in there and have that be like a portfolio lookbook. So I think that that's a really great thing. And prior to this job, I had like an introduction to me as your advisor, so a recorded video, and I uploaded the recorded video in there so anyone who came there could, they could read whatever they wanted, but then they could get a little sense of me and the pizzazz that I bring to my advising. You have a question or comment?
Yeah, I was wondering, would the featured section also be like a good place to like put photos of you of yourself if you're like doing like professional things, or like for example with like student government league tables? So would it be like good to sort of put photos like that in there?
Yeah, you certainly could do that. Let's take a look here at like some of the things that you can add. So for that, it would probably be like the add media, right? And then you go through and you go and upload your file and so on. But I think that that's a creative and good idea of like showing you in action doing what you do. Another option too is, in your header photo too, if you have like you public speaking, you could put that up there. But certainly in the featured section, you can do whatever kind of media that you want. Good idea, I like that. This activity section is just like the interactions that I've had from my LinkedIn feed. So like, celebrating somebody's work anniversary, or these are the posts that I've actually made. This one is really cool. So I work, learning and development, but 5 ways Beyonce is the queen of learning and development. I thought, oh, that's on brand for me. Okay, I love Beyonce and I do learning and development. And then here's that experience section. So I'll also taking a look at the time. Okay, so I'll probably just go through like one of these roles to give that as an example. And then we'll get back because we want to talk a little bit about network and stuff like that. But here is how I have described my current role on my LinkedIn profile. And if you're looking at it, you don't have to read it. But if you are looking at it, you're like, I don't think that that's how his resume looks. And you'd be right about that. So it's an opportunity to be more narrative around your experience on your LinkedIn profile, if you want to. There are plenty of people who just have their job history on there with no description at all. I wouldn't personally recommend that unless maybe it's a job that you had a long time ago and it's kind of near the bottom of your experience section, which I have a few of those too. But I would definitely put in some details about either a narrative like this style, or it could be a bulleted list about some of your achievements in that role. And you can also add media to your experience sections too. So maybe a project this is not a project I personally worked on, but again, in that spirit of like my customers coming to my profile with something that could help them. So I put that in there. But if I were, you know, creating thought leadership publications or something, I would put that in as the media there. And then, so something about way back in like the second slide, I was talking about credibility. This is an area where you can show that credibility of like, so I think I'm really good at critical thinking. Why do I think that? Well, because I've honed it in this job and that job and so on. So you can tag skills and put them in the context of like, how did I become an expert in this? Well, through this job. So I think that that's a really great thing to bring your credibility in, and so on. One other thing about jobs, because this is like stuff that you only know when you work at LinkedIn, or you might guess it sometimes, but if you are applying for a job on LinkedIn, there's a recruiter tool. So people who are in like HR departments and they're recruiters at companies, they have LinkedIn Recruiter, and they can see your profile and they will see lots of skills that are associated with you. And those will come in through different ways. We call it explicit and implicit skills. So explicit skills is like I explicitly say I'm good at critical thinking based on my experience in this job. But implicit skills is LinkedIn has, so much data, so many data points from a billion people. And how many thousands of people are customer success managers? So all that data in aggregate, LinkedIn knows, okay, so customer success managers are good at A, B, C, and D. And so whether or not I'm actually putting it there because I've called that my job and verified it, LinkedIn knows I possess those skills implicitly. So just wanted to let you know too, like that's kind of how you show up in the kind of recruiter profile on the back end, which is stuff I didn't even think about before I worked at LinkedIn.
You said verified, is that, you mean like getting the check mark or like?
Yeah, you can verify your.
The questions people can hear.
Oh, yeah, I said he used the term verified and I was just wondering if it had a specific meaning with respect to the program, like you have to go through an extra step to become verified.
You really only verify your current role, and you do that through your employee email address usually. So like me, I have, afauché@linkedin.com, and they sent, something to check to that email address, and I verified it. So really the verification is kind of only pertaining to your most recent role there. One other thing, so I know I said I was going to move on from experience, but I think that this is a note that's interesting and you might choose to employ it. But something I heard along the way was if you're working for a company that is not easily identifiable by just looking at the name, like it's a startup or the name is like totally creative and it has nothing to do with the industry that they're in, you might choose to put in a sentence or two to help the person looking at your profile understand what that company does, in addition to what your role was. So ConnectSed, not a household name, except maybe for some California community colleges. I wanted to say ConnectSed is a software platform, et cetera, it's there. So to get people understanding like, okay, so this was the company that he worked for, and then what did he do in that company? So I thought that was a really interesting piece of advice that I heard along the way, so I chose to do that too. And a small private healthcare college in California, not very well known globally, I would say. So I put in a sentence about what Samuel Merritt University is because they are specialized in health sciences. So that's that. There are other parts of your profile too. So your education, you can see down here. Everything is optional, right? But I've chosen to give a little bit more information about the coursework that I was most invested in and vibed with the best, what coursework resonated with me the most of my program, what I actually studied and produced for my thesis and so on. And then there's other things here too. So these are all kinds of goodies, not super essential, especially if you're just starting out. But there's other ways that you can do things around here too. Like this is from LinkedIn Learning courses. There's lots of free LinkedIn Learning courses, and when you finish them, you can post them to your LinkedIn profile. Projects are other ways that you can talk about the work experience that you've had through volunteer experiences or so on. Like for me, I've done a lot of conference presentations in my previous career, so I tried to put those in there to talk about the thought leadership that I brought to that field and volunteering as well. So that is a quick rundown, maybe not even so quick, but that is a rundown of a LinkedIn profile. And I wanted to get back because I promised you a little bit more about the networking kind of thing.
So Aaron, so just with the recap, people build out their profile, they click on that little line, it'll lead them into what fields they can fill out. And you've been giving us information about maybe best practices,
Exactly.
if you wanna be more descriptive, things like that, okay.
Yeah, and this has been a lot, and I'm giving a lot of detail and thoughts about why some of these things are important, but it can really be all distilled down to like, what are the building blocks of your profile? And luckily for everyone here and online, we'll get that out to you too. There's just a one pager that kind of really gets to the point about like, oh, here, yeah, that, and some pro tips on one page, so. Giving you the whole like inside outside view today, but you'll have a quick grab and go reference for future too. Again, this is just like some summary of what we've been talking about here, like your work history and education, the summary section, which is under about on your profile, putting in your volunteer experiences, which is actually like particularly important to consider if you are like a faculty member or a mentor in some way and working with somebody who doesn't have work experience yet. Coaching them to think through their volunteer experiences and how they can talk about the skills they gain through that and putting that on their profile while they continue to move forward and pursue a career. Good stuff. Also, everything that I've been talking about now is available on a free LinkedIn Learning course called Rock Your Profile. So if you search that, you will find a LinkedIn Learning course related to that. It's gonna say, do you wanna start a free trial? Ignore that and click the play button because it is an unlocked course and you can go through it. And really, it's the same style of what we've been talking about today, just a different person, different perspective. Actually, Lauren Jolda is super engaging and she's the one that created the Rock Your Profile curriculum. So that's a good one too. And then, hey, the networking piece. All right, let's look at the next slide. So when you're going in through LinkedIn, you know, you've done a little bit on your profile, but you're taking a break from your profile, and you're like, I want to add in some people from my current place of work or previous places of work or somebody that I went to college with or high school with. You're starting to build out your network. Wanted to just say, like, when you see first, second, third, what does that mean? And that is like your first degree here, this inner circle, those are those people that you've clicked connect and they've accepted. And so you have, you know, they're your friends, like on Facebook or Instagram, like you're following each other. That's first degree. Second degree is somebody that you follow is a first degree connection with them. And these are great introduction opportunities too, right? So I know this person very well, but they know this person very well who works in an industry that I want to get to know a little bit more about. Can this person introduce me to this person? They can if I ask nicely. And then third degree is a little bit farther removed. So you got a little bit of a chain to work through for the third degree, but that's what that means. And you can friend request or you can connect with third degree people directly as well too. There's nothing to prevent you from doing that. Which yesterday I was at a social, a bunch of people I'd never met before, all third degree connections. Now they're all first degree connections. So just kind of explaining that kind of thing, because in the next slide, we do talk a little bit, maybe we click. Yeah, okay. So this is what we're talking about, like those introductions kind of thing. So this is like when you're doing the connection request, the kind of note that you could send, just like little ideas here. But a little fun fact is like up to 50% of the hires are the result of somebody that you know, that you've met some point or a first degree connection on LinkedIn. So that's interesting. But these are good like little pro tips about like what you would put in. It's like, hey, I'm reaching out and this is why. Because when you're doing that profile, when you're doing that request, you want to know, like, let the person know why you're clicking. Question, comment?
I was wondering, I saw that on like your profile, it distinguishes between like followers and connections, and I was just wondering what the difference was.
Yeah, so what we've been talking about is connection, right? So you're putting a note and you said, will you be my friend? Kind of. But there are other people that you might not even like be like, I want to be directly connected with them, but you want to know what they're putting out there, especially if they're a content creator or something. One of the next slides is like Bill Gates. I'm like, I have no real use. I mean, I don't know, maybe I have a use of being directly connected to Bill Gates, but that's a far-fetched kind of thing. You can click follow and you can see everything that Bill Gates posts on there too. So yeah, some people have
If you
clicked,
click connect, he has to accept it,
yes.
right? So I have people that have actually clicked to ask to connect and they haven't responded. I'm like, psh, psh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But
Thanks
if
to
I
you,
still wanna
I-
follow his content, cause I respect him, he's a president at a
Yeah.
college, he's doing great things.
Yeah.
I wanna see what he's doing, I can follow regardless.
Yep.
So that's where the following is, you can still get news and feeds and information,
Mhm.
even though that person may not know you and might not be willing to accept your invitation.
Yeah, another example is, so I'm in LinkedIn Learning a lot, that's the product I like strategize on. And there's a really cool instructor who's a young person who left her corporate job to be like a instructor and have her own business in data analytics. Cool young Latina. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so cool, inspirational, and she has a lot to say. I followed her. I don't know her, I don't need to know her, but I want to see what she has to say. So I followed her. That's an example. Great question. Okay. Oh, more pro tips. Why you're interested, oh, I already said this. Why you're interested in a role and so on. Forgot about these animations. So, okay, so this is how you might, actually you can kind of sometimes leapfrog the first degree connection if you see somebody's a second degree connection. So again, like, this is me, I have a friend, and that friend has that friend, but that friend has something interesting to offer to me, like a perspective on a new job or something like that. So I could go directly to that person and just say like, hey, I know that you know Marcy. That's a great college friend of mine, but I also know that you work for Marriott Hotels International, which is an industry that I've been really curious about. I'd love to connect with you and maybe chat eventually. That's the kind of thing too. So you know, like, okay, I have this friend in common, and that's how you can kind of do your own searching. So, like I was saying, like, yeah, I want to like connect with people that I work with now, or that I worked with previously, that I went to college with. You go in, and then the search bar, you can start typing people's names, or you can type a company name or something like that. But knowing that you can use the filter, so you can filter by location. You know, sometimes, actually, good example is, you know, somebody might be searching Aaron Fauché. There is actually another Aaron Fauché who lives in the Bay Area who works in tech. I don't know how that like statistically works out, but then you can like filter by company and be like, where is he? Yeah, oh, okay, that's the right one, you know, or something like that, or location, like he lives in SF and I live in Los Gatos. Okay, so by location, you could filter us out, that sort of thing, but.
Is it just by company or are there other things like high school?
I
College.
think you can do education too if you click all filters,
Okay,
but
those are the defaults.
yeah, these are like the most prominent ones, so those are there, but under all filters, you can see all the nuances and stuff. So that's how I kind of narrow things down. Ooh, okay, this is another pro tip, but this one falls into the networking section, and I just used this yesterday when I went to that mixer, because I was like really vibing with some people, and I was like, okay, how do we stay connected? Do you have a LinkedIn? Yeah, of course. I said, okay, get out your app and I'll put my QR code up. So this is like, not a lot of people know about this, but in the search bar, in your mobile app, you can hit that little button up there and then you get this QR code, which is kind of common now, like from Venmo and all that kind of stuff. So you can either choose, this is my code, so I mean, not me, but this is what you would see under my code, and then the other person can scan that and add you, or you can go into scan mode and they have their QR code up and then you scan it and you add them. So this is a really great way to quickly connect with people and totally forget that there's other Aaron Fauchés in the same area because you're just going directly to my profile. Good stuff. Make your feed interesting. Okay. So these are all optional things and maybe some are intuitive, but let's talk about it anyway. So following companies, right? If you are, especially if you're a job seeker and you got a target industry, maybe following some of the biggest names in that industry, and following those companies so that whatever they're talking about how their business is doing or about, life at that company and so on, whatever they're talking about comes into your feed. Just like what individuals are sharing with their network, companies are doing that too. So you can choose to follow companies. Like when I was a study abroad advisor, you bet I followed all kinds of international universities and also these companies that also create and facilitate study abroad programs to find out what's new and hot with them. And then follow influencers. So there's our friend Bill Gates. Do I need to be his direct connection? No. Would I get it approved? Probably not. So I can follow him and find out what he's putting out there in the world. So influencers of any kind, whether that's big or small, like you saw, 2,000 people are following me. I have no idea why, but they are there. And you can also if there were ever kind of any concerns or whatever, you can go in and make yourself unfollowable and so on. There's lots of privacy controls on LinkedIn if you needed to dig into that kind of area.
There's a question in the chat. It says, how do you find that QR code on the app that you had just showed previously?
Well, yeah, if we go back.
It's
probably
hard to
in
find.
the slide.
Yeah.
Search.
In the search bar,
All right.
on the right, it's this little thing that I tried to put that square around. But if it doesn't show up automatically,
Mine did.
if
They have to be in the mobile app, I think. Is
yeah,
also-
in the mobile app, certainly, that's a good clarification. And then, like for me, by default, it's not there, but if I just tap into the search bar, then it shows up too. So if you're not seeing it automatically, just put your finger on the search bar and it will expand and you'll have your
She
QR.
says found it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was a hard one to find when I was at a conference. We're like, where's the QR code? I just wouldn't have thought for the search bar, so.
Hashtags. So you can follow hashtags just like on Twitter and so on. And so, I mean, you can see examples here, but for me, previous career, I would follow hashtag international education, hashtag travel, and all that kind of stuff. And now I might follow hashtag learning and development, hashtag employee development, and so on. And it doesn't have to be exactly related to your career, but things that you're interested in hearing a more professional voice on, follow those hashtags and you'll get posts in your feed regardless of whether you're following that company or not. Groups are another thing on LinkedIn too. This is more of a community. I don't know if I'd call it like a chat room or something. I have such old references. I'm an elder millennial, a geriatric millennial, I think is the term. These are, you can see like thousands of members have joined this and it's like a shared feed page, but with a specific focus topic on there. So like I have had some discrete project manager jobs, or project management has been a part of my job for lots of different roles. So I'm in a lot of project management groups and you can kind of hear like, okay, so, oh, the certification is hot and up and coming, or the test has just changed, or here's some really cool tools that I just started implementing as a project manager and so on. It's knowledge sharing among, some kind of like-mindedness there. So tons of groups around different interests, and those are worth joining and checking out as well. Oh, and this is a little bit about posting yourself. This is a short section, and I just, kind of like a lot of time, and I'm also kind of guilty of not really posting very much, and I shouldn't even say guilty. I'm not a habitual poster on LinkedIn, but if you had that interest and you wanted to be more of a presence on LinkedIn, here are some good cases where you would come to LinkedIn and share. So things like, hey, I had my 3rd anniversary at work, and here's all the awesome things that I've done over the last 3 years. Industry events, you visited a customer. Me, I'm in kind of like a sales account management role. So when I go to Alaska Airlines, I might take a picture with the HR department and post about how wonderful it was to connect with them and talk about strategy and help them meet their goals, things like that. So these are some examples too, a little too hard to read right now, but this is one of my coworkers here I adore her, so I just wanna say, hey, Sam, she's, you know, she's not gonna hear me, but, yeah, so those are some ideas, some inspo about why you would share, and then this is like some things to keep in mind when you're doing a post. You know, share your authentic voice. You might get an eye roll, you're like LinkedIn, everyone's talking about like, oh, I'm so pleased and excited and blah, 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 blah. That, there's a lot of that on LinkedIn. But authenticity is also acceptable and encouraged on LinkedIn. If you wanna get sort of picked up in the algorithm, one of the tricks is post often and regularly, like, so at a time interval. Asking, you know, somebody, what do you think about this at the end of saying what you were saying in your post is a great way to get interaction with that post. And then again, kind of picked up by the algorithms, include a video or a picture. Pro tip, I guess, is LinkedIn's overall strategy has gone super, super deep on video in the last like 2 months. So this is like fresh news. Even so in the LinkedIn app, there's a video button at the bottom. That's how much we're trying to lean into video. So if you're somebody who like can make a casual video to express what you wanted to do that, because LinkedIn is looking for that kind of content and you'll probably get boosted in the algorithm for that. So rich media, hashtags, and so on. So these are some pro tips if you wanted. And here we go. So that was through everything, right? So the building blocks of a profile with reassurance that there's no exact right way to do anything on there. Do it how you want to, and you will probably change it up frequently, like at least I do. So there's no right way to do anything, but you know, here's some inspo and ideas and pro tips for how to make your profile. And then we talked about like networking. How does that work? What is the first, second, third? What does that mean? How do I ask for intros and so on? Then we're like, okay, so then my profile, the people that I know, how else can I build out what I see in my feed when I log into LinkedIn.com? The first thing I see my feed, like, okay, so following companies, influencers, and so on. And then, hey, if I want to share a thought, what's a good reason to share a thought? And what are some tips to like optimize or make it engaging or be the best post that it can be? That's what we covered today. Open for any other questions, comments, and I will fully admit when I don't know something. So my expertise is not extremely deep. I don't work in the LinkedIn.com part of LinkedIn. I work in a different part, but I know enough. I actually have had a LinkedIn profile for 15 years. LinkedIn mentioned that to me and asked me, you know, said, you should post about your 15-year history of having a LinkedIn profile. So I did. So I've been on LinkedIn for a long time and I've been at LinkedIn for 3 years and not doing profile stuff. But let the questions, comments, concerns, and confessions roll in our next few minutes while we wrap. Yes.
I know you had mentioned that like you can sort of differentiate your LinkedIn from your resume. Is there anything that like in terms of like stuff that you would put on a resume where you wouldn't necessarily put on your LinkedIn, or like what's the kind of the best way to go about that?
That's a good question. And also like here's one place where I'm gonna say I'm not like an expert. I've never been in like recruiting or anything like that. So or a career advisor. But I have heard from career advisors and stuff like that before. And some people say on your resume, you know, only keep it to a bulleted list and really use a lot of numbers and that kind of stuff. Those are great things. And you could do that on your LinkedIn profile, but your LinkedIn profile does not have such rigid expectations. And so that's why I put like more of a narrative in mine. And that tip around like, if it's a startup or a small company, like talk about what that company is and then what you did and how you impacted their success, which you don't get into all that detail on your resume. So I think those are some of the differences. Is that helpful for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially what you said about the numbers. I know it's like a big thing.
Yeah, have to put that on a resume. Can put that, it's always a good idea too, if you like, say, there was an example in there, I hit 109% of my quota. You can put that on your LinkedIn profile. That's pretty cool. But I think resume is a bit more prescriptive and your LinkedIn profile, be creative.
Any questions from Zoomies?
There was one earlier about typography, if there was a certain hierarchy that's recommended in terms of like the about you. Like you had those separations, like you had the little line to separate different
Yeah.
areas.
Can you control? The font.
You can't control the font like as in, yeah, the typeface, the font. And you can't also like the about is going to say about in big heading letters. You can't change the size of that or change what it says. But for me, in my about section, I had, you know, a few dashes to sort of visually separate. I took that upon myself to do that. There's no recommendation to do that or anything, but yeah, it's just a plain text box and I put in those dashes and then I chose to do the rest of that stuff on there. But yeah, you can't really change any of the headers or anything. One thing that's interesting that changes though is if you have multiple jobs at a single organization or company, the heading of that experience section changes a little bit. So typically it's just gonna be roll, and then it'll show the company under each one of those. But if you have multiple roles in one company, then it's gonna show company and then role A, role B, role C, role D. I mean, minor detail, but just in the spirit of talking about how the layout might change on there. Yeah.
And then if I could just recap, I think that for students, the about section sounded really important for them to kind of do a narrative about their skills, and maybe you haven't had an internship in this, but you've helped an instructor put together a database and how the skills might transfer. So I think that was really important to highlight for our students is what skills do you have that can help you get where you want to go? And then something I didn't know was that you could add projects. So that might be cool for students to add as well. Like here's a project I did for my, you know, business class. We went to the community, blah, blah, blah. So I thought those were really cool takeaways for students. And for instructors, I just want to remind us that we're models. So hopefully we can have great profiles for them to use as guidelines. And as a treat for everyone who's here, I designed on Canva just some basic banners that you could use with our
With the
school colors, with our West
colors.
Valley colors. So I'm gonna send this out to those of you that signed in. I'll email them to you. I have 3 different ones. Like if you're not a fan of that one, it's too busy, right? There's some more basic ones. But I tried this because this is where your picture will go. And we're gonna have headshots. So that I'll send out in an email to you. We will give you the 1-page handout. And we want to thank Aaron for giving up his time to come talk to us. And we have 30 people on Zoom.
Hey, Zoomies,
30
thank you.
people,
Open
and
it up, show 'em.
you are getting an entire chat of just thank you,
Stop share.
yous. So, oh yeah, stop share. Oh, but look at all these thank yous. I just wanted to
Aw,
show you
thanks,
all the
everyone.
thank yous that you're getting, people that just did not know how to do this before that. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's really no wrong way, and to your point too, for the students who might be like, oh my gosh, I don't really know if I have enough to put on there. In the about
Skills.
section, just like talking about your skills, but you can also talk about like what your aspirations are. Like, hey, I went and I enrolled in this program because this is my plan. Put that in your about section. Totally good and worthwhile. So. Oh,
Is there anything else you want to say, or if you have individual questions, if you have a few minutes, maybe we
yeah,
can
come
ask
on,
you.
talk.
We'll get headshots right now.
And then headshots are next door,
Yeah.
and there's also jackets in case you want to borrow a little jacket to throw on over whatever you're wearing to make you a little more professional. You take care.
There's
And-
another crochet in Los Allison I know. Do
Really?
you know Jean?
No. Although my uncle's name is Jim Crochet, but
Did you?
You're a-
no, I know my uncle.
No, this guy's got to be behind
Can
you.
I say,
Uh-huh.
star student?
Yeah, so it was my grandmother's.
Let me turn
Yeah.
on.
I'm gonna go.
No, it's not.
Get back on speed.
I'm a little bit of a
Well,
nerd.
30 minutes.
So I looked up like most.
Get your headshots, even if you don't need to lead it.
Yeah, she's gonna format it
27th most popular
specifically
music,
for LinkedIn,
but
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's far away from
In
here.
Los Alamos.
That's
It's
really
close to town.
interesting.
Nice place overlooking the town downtown.
Okay, maybe he is my long lost uncle. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,